should festivals be political? Putting artists on a stage already is a political activity. It is creating culture which reaches out to people.
You're listening to Echoes of Prague Music Week.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast Echoes of Prague Music Week. My name is Kristina Kratochvilova, and in this episode we'll try to figure out whether music festivals today are going through an evolution or a revolution. To talk about this, I'm joined by Holger Jan Schmidt, General Secretary of Europe, which is the European Festival Association. He's one of Europe's leading voices in the festival scene, with a strong focus on sustainability, social change, and mental health in the live music industry. Welcome, Holger, and let's dive in.
Thanks for having me.
So, Holger, as you've been deeply involved in the European festival world for over 2 decades, do you feel like festivals are evolving gradually, or are we seeing a real revolution in how they're imagined, produced, and experienced today? And if so, in what ways?
To be honest, I cannot see the revolution, but as long as I am with festivals, and that's kind of all my life, or at least all my professional life, there's evolution all the time. Whether it is for the specific festivals or for the market or for the industry. So I think there's a lot of things happening on different levels, and of course there's outside effects that make the evolution in the industry, whether it is the pandemic, for example, or the energy crisis, which was caused by Russia's war in Ukraine, and so on. Inflation, all these things lead to an evolution or new steps and new developments in an evolution. But I can hardly see a real revolution happening that puts the whole industry upside down.
Mm-hmm. And actually, how many festivals do you personally attend every year? And do you have any favorites?
The favorites. That's, of course, if I say something which is closer to my heart than the others, then in my role as General Secretary for an association, I think that's not fair. Usually, so Europe as a festival association represents 131 festivals and associated organizations from 31 European countries. And there's even more festivals, of course, and even more partners in our network, but that's mainly the association. Usually, I go to, I would say, between 8 and 12 events per year in the summer. So it's always the summer season, and I'm not counting showcase festivals and conferences that I attend during autumn and winter and spring, for example. But during the summer, that usually would be the case. Not this year, because we have a newborn child, and that's the priority right now. But I like to go to festivals more because I want to see how it is done and how the spirit is and how the team is working together, rather than the program. There might be super inspiring things that I realize while I'm there, but sometimes it is more that I want to go to a festival and see how it is produced, and how the people do, how the not the people on stage, but the teams and the festival makers do their magic. And because that is the festival family, that's my family. So I'd like to see what they are doing.
Mm-hmm. First of all, congratulations on the newborn baby.
Thank you.
And I would like to know, as you said that you go to 8 to 12 festivals per year in different countries, can you somehow see some defining thing in festivals like in the different countries? Like, can you say like, oh, I'm in Germany right now. This is definitely German festival. This is in Hungary. Can you see some differences?
I'm not. I'm not sure. Of course, um, the easy one would be food and beverage. If you say, all right, and that's what my wife and me, if we attend such festivals, I'd like to go and have regional food there. I don't need to have the burger, the pizza. Um, um, I'd like to have something then where I have the feeling that I'm also experiencing local cuisine. But it is, I think it's not really from country to country. It is, for me, it is more from festival to to festival. And I'm not sure. I've been to um, Rock for People, for example, and it's often that you see that the venue it's taken place that has a big effect on what you can do there as a festival. And of course, you can see things in a program. And I've also been to Pohoda, and both are taking place on airfields. Um, but they have a different feeling, kind of different approach. But I couldn't say this is Slovak and this is Czech, for example. And I've been to Opener in Poland, for example, which is much bigger. Um, um, and it's done differently in a different mindset, but I couldn't say that that actually is a Polish mindset. I couldn't say that. And also there's something that I like. Probably if you dive deeper, you will find some things, but I would think you find those in certain projects or communication or whatever, but not really in the approach. And I like that because if we're talking about quality, and that is one of the objectives that our association has, that we want to raise the quality in different fields of the festival industry, whether it's safety, whether it's sustainability, whether it's working conditions, etc. That all festivals are working in their capacity in these fields, and we raise the quality together on an international level.
And if you had to imagine a future fit festival in 230, what would it look like in terms of energy, social purpose, audience engagement, and production?
First of all, thank you for name dropping our European project. It is, Europe is happy that we, for the second time, have received European funding through the Creative Europe program for our project 3F, which is Future Fit Festivals, in which we concentrate on certain developments in fields like safety, like sustainability, like diversity and inclusion and digital transformation, but also very much on advocating for popular music festivals in Europe and beyond. Thinking about what does the Future Fit Festival need, that's basically a lot because I just mentioned 4 topics, and there's so many more on the artistic level. What about ticketing? The communication, marketing, etc. And in all of these areas we have evolution, but That said, I think first and foremost, a future fit festival needs to have an idea, a philosophy, maybe even a vision of what the festival wants to be and where the festival wants to go. Based on that, building a community that identifies with your festival, and that's not just the audience. I feel that is also the team behind such an event, but also the artists playing there, maybe identifying with the event, the people going there, the partners that you have, whether it's media or if you work with sponsor, whether it's sponsors, etc., that you build a community around the philosophy of the festival. And then you have to look into all those different fields of production, analyze where you are, where you want to go, where you can be better. And I think you need to have a structure to understand your status quo. And I think no one can do that on your own. If you're not looking to the left and to the right, what the others are doing, what are the developments, what does science say, etc., then you will probably struggle. So from our perspective in Europe, in the association, is of course the exchange between festivals that makes festivals better, learn things, and you don't have to make the mistake that your peers already have done and talk about. You can also learn from that. And if you have a strong network and if you have open eyes and also share, then you will get information and experience back, and that will make you stronger in the end. And but of course, you can dive now into every field of a festival production and analyze this and go for several measures and steps and milestones to increase the quality and what you need to look at to be fit to meet the challenges of the future, to be more resilient, to be more responsible, relevant for the young people going to your festival, and maybe also resistant to threats from outside.
And as you said, you're working with 133 festivals in 31 European countries. And what do you think are the biggest challenges they face today? And how does Europe help address them collectively?
It is pretty much an easy answer because we ask them every year. We always in December, together with the IQ magazine, we are publishing the European Festival Report, and we have a survey with international festival promoters. And the main challenges are rising production costs, artist fees. Sorry, just thinking about the fourth one. I cannot say, but extreme weather. It is, and sorry, three was selling tickets, and four is extreme weather. Extreme weather is new. It wasn't that high on the agenda before, but it's obvious why this is. We have more and more severe weather events, heat, extreme rain during the summers, and it's not going to be less in the future. But it is rising production costs is the number one thing. Of course, we can hardly do anything from our end in the different countries to lower the production costs or the have an effect on suppliers and their prices. But what we, of course, can do is facilitate the dialogue between festivals, how to deal with that and how to cope with rising production costs, whether it is new ways to create income cover those costs or operate differently or discuss what the audience need, whether you can maybe cut some things and increase others, which maybe concentrate more on certain programs which is already existing and having less side events. Or also, that's basically just from the top of my head and nothing that I would say works for all festivals. That might be just something that festivals are exchanging on. But I would say, and I said that before, it is the exchange of experience, the exchange of ideas, discussing with your peers and we can give a platform for that. And something that I would like to mention, and in a market like popular music festivals, which has its huge ups and downs. At the moment, there's throughout Europe a lot of festivals dying or get stopped by promoters, even some who have quite a history, and that basically has also different reasons, but the number of festivals throughout Europe was rising for 2 decades. The 2 decades that I'm working in, it was always getting more and more and more and more and more. And during all these times, we had the feeling, we're discussing in Europe, now this is the peak, it can't be even more. It rose, it rose, it rose. I cannot say whether this now is really a going down effect or whether we are just equalizing to a healthy level of numbers of festivals. I hope it is that way, and we're not losing the interest on festivals on a wider level. But I'm convinced that we will stop on a very healthy level for the festival industry. What I was starting out in this answer is Europe is the one place where festivals from the independent sector, from the big players like Live Nation, Eventim, Superstruct, AEG, sit on one table and exchange on the challenges that everybody in the industry has. And they're doing that on eye level with respect. And of course, there's competition between them out on the market. And that might also mean that there's certain subjects they're not exchanging on the Europe table. But basically, there's no other place where all of these sit together and exchange, and partly on a very friendly basis, which might be something unique. Even you probably don't have that in touring. But the festival people know each other, and many of them have been independent before and knew when they were independent. Some of them then joined one of those big companies and portfolios, but the people stay the same. So the connections stay. And we try to make the best out of this very unique position.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a simple question came to my mind, and that is, do you know how many festivals are not part of Europe? And are you actively contacting them and trying to let them in? And why should they? Why should they get in? And also, like, what is the perfect size? Not perfect size, but like, what's the size of the festival when it comes to that it makes sense for them to join? Because there are so many festivals that are just visited by 100 of people. That's probably is it a festival that should join Europe as well?
To answer your first question is nobody knows how many festivals there are. in Europe, and many. I think the question occurs many times, and more and more, I have the feeling that this is a a project which at some point needs to be done, but it can always be just the status quo of that time because it will be a huge research project to find all the festivals. And now I will say festivals from my perspective, and what we are doing is always popular music festivals, but there are so many, these city festivals, arts festivals, theater festivals, film festivals, etc. Not talking about those. Um, if we want to research how many popular music festivals there are, that is basically um, a multi-year research project that needs to be funded, and we don't have the funds. So the answer is no, I don't know that. But I know many festivals which are not part of Europe and which we would be interested in having in the association. And of course, we are in touch with them, and eventually some of them join, and some we are connected on a friendly basis, and some don't react. It is what somebody would probably think how our how our work is, anyways. But um, regarding what is the ideal size, is there is not an ideal size to be a Europe member, but of course you have to have a certain size. And in our criteria, the threshold is 3,000 people per day, and then there's other criteria like is it a multi-day event? It shouldn't be like one day, one stage, one big headliner, and five more acts. That sounds more like a concert with a lot of openers. Um, so it should be hopefully multiple stages or multiple days. Then the question is there camping? Is there not camping, etc.? But um, different ways. But it's always um, festival. No festival is alike. So they all have their own identity. If one festival doesn't really meet that one criteria, then it might meet all the others, and we get the application and it's going through our board. The board members look at it and say, all right, but this still has the character that we want. And hardly any get turned down because of that. One example, for example, one, one festival is Ipsic Rock in Sicily, in Italy. They they have everything, but they are below 3,000 a day. But that's basically such a unique, nice festival. Haven't been there, but I followed them for quite some time, and it's super interesting. And it's great to have them with Europe.
And how can member festivals actively engage with Europe's mission and benefit from its network? Like, do you maybe have some networking events where all the members can meet?
Yes, we there's some members meetings, some are physical, some are online. We have certain networking events at main music industry events. For example, our European Festival Awards take place at Eurosonic in the beginning of the year for 15 years now, or for the 15th edition will be next year, and we gather there with the festival family. Always have a very well attended members meeting. We organize meetings for our members, for example, with international artists agencies in London during ILMC in the beginning of the year. We meet at the European Festival Forum. In the end of this year, in November, we have the European Festival Conference, which is our own conference. We do this with a limited amount of participants to keep it still personal for the exchange. And it's a great way for our members to meet for 3 days, just talk about popular music festival stuff and exchange with your peers. Also, not just in a framework of a bigger conference where you're distracted by concerts, by all the other issues in the music industry, but be there with 60, 70 popular music festival people and have a great time and b great exchange. So we have that, but how can you also ask me how members can get in exchange or can work within Europe? We have certain working groups on focus subjects. There's in 2006 there was the initiation of the YES group, Europe Event Safety Group. They had their, I think it's the 38th seminar in the beginning of this year in Groningen at Eurosonic, exchanging on health and safety, security, crowd management issues, but also inclusion, etc. All the stuff. The leading experts in this field are in this group, and it's something that we cherish a lot. People are invited to join these working groups and learn from each other, give their experience, ask questions, help others with their questions. Quite similar is the GO group, Green Operations Europe, our sustainability think tank, which is not just for Europe members, even going beyond. We want to exchange with scientists, with activists, with experts in the field. We have a workshop format which is traveling through Europe every year in another city, in another country. So this year we were in Roskilde in Denmark. Last year we were in Bratislava in Slovakia. The year before Barcelona in Spain. So we're going there and have an exchange on how to run festivals smarter, greener, more sustainable. And we have our European Festival report. We ask people to give their opinions. We have the Take a Stand initiative for social cohesion in the festival scene. We have communication campaigns that festivals are able to share or to work with when we call them. Right now, we're running a youth exchange where festivals can send their young professionals to other festivals. There's a lot. But the most important thing for me is be active, be interested, come join the meetings, and be open and exchange with your peers. And the rest will come, because the most successful Europe is most successful if we don't have to do the stuff. We just bring the people together and they connect with each other, and then they start exchanging or even having projects on their own where Europe might not be involved, but the festivals are connected. And that's what I think is super important.
And you have mentioned sustainability, which has been central to your work for years. So, do you feel that festivals today are finally treating it as a core principle, or is it still often seen as a nice to have rather than a must have?
Um, no, it's absolutely a must-have. I'm sure you cannot run a festival without a sustainability policy. Um, we started early on, so we're working in the field already for more than 20 years now. Um, and to be honest, in the field of live events, the popular music festival scene is the leading sector if it comes to sustainability and climate action and measures and innovation. Um, so I would say there's no way around it, and there's also no way back because the audience also demands it. Um, Still, we have to deal with what happens in society and in politics because it is less talked about. So one would feel it is not that important anymore, and maybe then also festivals don't treat it like they don't talk about it themselves, but they still need to do it and still need to run their operations in this way. Um, but I would think that something which restricts us if it comes to achieving certain goals or levels of sustainability is that so much still is voluntary. And I hardly can say as the general secretary of the association because I'm sure festivals have different opinions on that. But if we really want to achieve climate friendliness or even um, climate neutrality, if it comes to the impact of festivals, then we would need certain um, restrictions or laws in place that ask us to do certain things, because otherwise there are festivals who are who are just doing as much as they need to do. But if we feel the responsibility towards the environment, towards the climate and towards the next generations, then it might be that if we want to reach this, we need to have more information where we need to go in the next years. Because look at all the targets that the countries have set for themselves. They signed the Paris Agreement. They have defined uh, levels of CO2 emissions, etc. And in just a few countries, this has been translated into the several sectors, but the cultural sector is still questioning what and when, to what extent, what is where we need to go, and it's completely unclear. I would say give us the information, give us the targets for the certain time periods, and then we can work on it. But at the moment, this is a very loose situation.
And what kind of restrictions do you have on mind? Could you be a little bit more specific?
I would think it's like emission targets, and festivals then need to measure and need to report what they're producing. But it's and that goes again. The sustainability goes to different fields. It is we're talking about transport, food and beverage, energy, water, resources, and waste. all these certain fields in one festival might be stronger in the one, while the other is in the second field. But we, if we really want to change things, then we need to have a clearer framework, and that means at least a certain standard. And we are part of a big working group, a pan-European working group for popular music festivals with a lot of expert organizations, and Europe as the big festival organization is part of that. We are working on putting together a project which also includes a standard of practice in this field, and hopefully that could then be the basis for legislation even, but that's something to be discussed in the future when we get there.
And you lead Go Group that focuses on sustainability-related and environmental issues and at events. Could you share how these initiatives are changing how festivals approach energy use and environmental responsibility?
Go Group started also, like many of the Europe activities, as a exchange format and showing best practices, trying to be creative in a way of getting the participants to exchange, and bring people together who usually would not meet each other. And that is still what we're doing. I mentioned the workshops taking place in certain cities, but also the Go Group is part of European funded projects. So we also, in cooperation with other organizations, help develop tools. And we have created, for example, in the 3F project, there's the European Green Festival Roadmap 2030, which our the sustainability experts from our network developed to help festivals meet certain the targets of the EU Green Deal, and also reflecting on the sustainable development goals of the UN, but giving them basically the steps that they need to do. And we are sorting them by how difficult they are and what would be the easy steps to take at the first place, and then going to more challenging ones. We also were part of the Erasmus project Future Festival Tools, and basically all these tools are free to use for everybody. They're out there for the whole industry to use. And the Future Festival Tools, for example, they include a self assessment tool, which means if you're starting out, or even if you have started out but you're not really sure where you are, there's a self-assessment that you can do with your for your festival and see, all right, I'm on a beginner level, or even further on my journey, but where do I need to concentrate? That's the first one. Second one is the Green Festival Stories. It's like an inspirational guide where we're going through all these fields of action that I just mentioned, and we have examples from all over Europe from many festivals who talk about the challenges, how they approached them, and how they achieved certain success. And then there's an e-learning course where festival crews and teams can learn what in all these fields of action. I mentioned them: energy, transport, food and beverage, etc. You can go through it, gain knowledge, because it will never be just the sustainability manager of a festival who makes the festival more sustainable or climate friendly. It will always be a teamwork. It will always be a task of the whole network of stakeholders in the event, and you cannot do it without the audience, without the sponsors and the artists, etc. So that means there's so many people needed to involve everybody, and these people need knowledge in this field. So this is a free tool to give people knowledge, and you can do this even in a fun way. It's the e-learning course is you go through, get some information, and for example, for the field of energy, go through that, get information, and in the end, there's something like a little test, and you can do this basically in your lunch break together with your coworkers, go through it and have it like the test in the end, to have it like a quiz, and it is basically even a bit entertaining and interactive, and you start exchanging on the subject, which helps you taking in the information even deeper. We we're pretty proud of that, but it needs to be out there even on a broader level. People need to realize what there is on offer for them to learn, and they don't have to really pay that much. And Go Group is involved in these. So Go Group in Europe, in this case, they're the same, and we're part of these projects, and will be on even more.
Mm-hmm. And you're also the co-author of the book Stay Sound and Check Yourself, which focuses on mental health in the live music and event industry. Why do you think this topic was overlooked for so long? And how is the industry responding now?
It is pretty obvious. I overlooked it myself for some times, and then I was struggling myself with a period where I had panic attacks. And as soon as you start dealing with that, you, of course, get more sensitive on, all right, am I the only one in this in this industry? And I surely wasn't. And when I had that, it was back in 2016 when I experienced this period, and it really shook my whole not the career, but it was was a very challenging time, which made me even struggle to fulfill my job and my tasks. And looking at that, it was for me, being also a conference speaker, curator, it was a very important thing to focus on this a bit more. We, in the years after, in 17 and 18, we dedicated one day of the Go Group workshops each to mental health, for example. One major event for me was when we were on stage at Nouvelle Prague. I think it was in 2017, and we were on stage, and I was one of the speakers, and I asked the audience back then, because before we were talking about, this is always a taboo for many people who don't like to open up on it, have the feeling it's weak, or let's not focus on it. And I asked everybody in the room whether they have experienced themselves with colleagues, friends, or family. Whether it is depression, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, etc., like mental health issues. And everybody raised their hand in the room. And then the question is, so why are we hesitating exchanging about this and talking about this? Because I have the feeling that if you break your leg, you're not staying home and trying to figure out how to do this yourself. You go and get some help. If you see my um, my mind, my brain, my psychology is not working the way I want it to, or it should be. It I should also not sit at home and figure this out for myself and try to get help to get happy again and to feel healthy again, at least. So then we then we had Prague basically played big role in this because we had one of the go-go workshops, and that one was in Prague. And we had one of the days that was dedicated to mental health, and a professor that we invited is a German professor called Katja Ehrenberg. We invited her. She gave a presentation on stress and how to cope with stress. And there were so many great talks and discussions during that day that in the end of that day, before she went home, I stayed a bit in Prague, but in the end of that day, she asked, don't you think we should do something to share these inspiring stories to show people out there that there's so much more who suffer, who deal with it. You don't need to feel alone, and see how others cope with it and how others succeed in coping with it. And that's how the book project started. I think we were not the first ones, definitely, but it was one of the first projects of this kind, and we wanted to, it shouldn't be a scientific book where it's, get just scientific input. We wanted to really create this atmosphere of people from the industry opening up on what they experience. So it is based on interviews with the very different people from all over Europe, musicians, music journalists, but mainly people from the live music industry and the festival industry. But they are from very young team members, for example, of a communications team of a promoting company, but also festival directors, the leaders of safety departments, etc. So very different people, and they're giving their personal stories, and that is something that helped me read, and I know it helped a lot others as well. But when we were ready with the last interview, the whole world was shut down because the pandemic then hit, and we basically had the feeling we cannot publish this book during the pandemic without looking at the pandemic, because that was the biggest stress test that our industry ever had. And then we gathered all our interview partners in 3 different roundtables, recorded those, and having them exchange about what they experienced during, back then it was the beginning, it was in the summer of 2020. And so we have a big chapter, which is also a nice screenshot of the situation in the beginning of the pandemic in our industry as part of this book. And sorry that I talk so long, but you if you poke me, especially in that on that topic, I think it's so important, and there's so much to say. And I just can beg everybody, please don't keep it to yourself. Open up, and I think there's a lot of it. It has been in conferences a lot. Companies are looking at this a lot, being more aware. It still is. There's still so much way to go to normalize that. If you see somebody struggling, for it is different for people asking for help. It is different for people offering help because they don't want to intimidate others because they go there and say, I have the feeling you have a problem. It is difficult for people to do that. But still, I would think we need more sensitivity there. We need people to open up and make it more normal to talk about that through the industry. It's gotten better, but it is not at all good by now.
You're the project manager of the Take a Stand initiative, launched in 2017. And in your view, what role should festivals play in promoting social cohesion and tolerance in today's polarized world?
I think, I would start it from a different angle. Sometimes I'm asked, should festivals be political? And if you ask me, putting artists on a stage already is a political activity. It is creating culture which has an effect, which reaches out to people. If you define politics only as party politics and supporting one candidate from one party for a certain election, of course, that's not what festivals are there for. But festivals have their place in society. Festivals, and we began this interview also with what does a Future Fit festival need? And I said we need to have an idea where we want to go. We would need a vision. We would need a philosophy of this festival. And if you have that, you see a purpose for your festival. And if you want to follow this purpose and fulfill this purpose, you will take certain actions which have an effect on society, which send out messages, which strengthen values that you define for your festivals. And if you do that, I would think that basically is a political act in itself. And if it comes to those values, and if it comes to our effect on society, and I would think many of the festivals define their events to be places that give to society and that want to create a better world. Then we're talking about peaceful dialogue, about respect, about tolerance towards people with a different way of life, about cultural exchange. And if you foster all these actions that could be raised to help strengthen these values, then you have a big impact on society, and that really leads to social cohesion. If you want to gather a community around your festival that identifies with your festival, with your idea, with the offer, but also with the philosophy of the festival, take something home. Maybe thinks about this after the festival again. Maybe takes it in. And there's so many young people who define at least parts of their lifestyle, who get experience and inspiration for the rest of their life at our events. That's a very big gift, but it's also a big responsibility if you think about that they get it there. And if you see that this is the power that we have, then with that comes responsibility, but with that comes also a responsibility to define your values. And if you have those values, live them, show them, and bring them out in the world and make it a better place. Having an effect on society, and as such, be political.
So political statements do belong on stage, even though that visitors must have, because with the festival's size of Siget, there must be so many visitors that have different kind of opinions, for example, on Trump administration, the situation in Gaza, the war in Ukraine. Should be also festivals criticized about the political statements that artists do on stage, and how should they face it?
Yes, I think that is, if I say that there's certain messages and values that need to be strengthened. If I say that for festivals, I cannot say that artists should not do it. Rather, I would say that I would like artists to speak out more because they are heard. People hear them, and if an act on stage raises their voice, it reaches much more people than if a festival puts up an ad or a banner or puts something on the screens. It has a different effect. Yes, and it might occur that the values of the festival, the idea and the philosophy of the festival, and the philosophy of an artist work very well together, and it sends the message to a complete different level. But it might also that they clash and not fit with each other. But that's the task of the festival and the artist to then find compromise or a solution for that. There's very different different situations which would occur, but I would think it would not be the right way to then say, all right, let's get completely apolitical, because if then artists and festivals alike go apolitical and anti-political, for example, and no, let's just go for entertainment, drinking and headbanging, then festivals get very much alike, exchangeable, and will not have the same power and magic like that before.
And another important topic for festivals is diversity and inclusion, not only in lineups, but also within crews, suppliers, and leadership teams. And how are festivals responding to these expectations, particularly in terms of gender and racial representations?
Yeah, but it's also, this include a lot of different subjects. If we now just looking at numbers, for example, we're talking, of course, a lot about gender equality. If you ask me, we're a bit too much focused on what happens on the stages and often forget to see what's behind the stages. We have a huge increase, and I would say there's a movement, of course, like with initiatives like Key Change, for example, and a very um, intrinsic motivation within festivals. At least that's what I feel within our active members of festivals who are actively raising the number of um, female artists on their stages. But of course, then there's if we are talking about diversity or equality, then there's of course so many others, artists from the BPOC community. Are there um, artists with handicaps, etc.? Of course, we can look at those, but also in our teams. You mentioned that. Europe created in our 3F project, we have created a diversity and inclusion toolset that should help festivals with tools, with guideline, with a mission statement, with a lot of best practice examples, with a glossary to understand certain terminology better. We try give that not only to our members but to the whole industry. Everybody who's interested can go to Europe. That's yourope.org and go to projects, and you will find it there. And please feel free to use it for good. But for me, one thing that is we are talking about the representation of people with migrant backgrounds, with people from the BPOC community on our stages. I think there's a lot happening, and people might say not enough, and that's I completely would confirm that. But if I look into our network and our festival crews and management teams, and also in the association network, then I would say the representation there is super low, and I don't know why it is yet. And I think that is something that we try to find out within the project: is why is it so low? And does it mean we're not attractive, or are we intimidating, or I would think that many say, but we feel very open, and look what we're doing on our stages, etc. And I would think there's best intentions, but I think there's still a lot to learn and a lot to change. And that is something that I can't tell you what we have done already, but it's most certainly something that we will look at to be more inclusive in that way, or at least to find out why we're not representing them in our teams at the moment, and how we could help change that.
And there's also been a talk about expanding festival offers for broader audiences. But what does it mean to truly design festivals that are inclusive for minorities or underrepresented communities? Like, what are some good examples that you maybe seen in Europe?
It is some festivals, for example, have different levels of ticket prices, giving them the chance to join. Boom Festival in Portugal, for example, they are they have a community coming from all over the world, and they have a very impressive structure with ambassadors in certain countries, with researching about the economic abilities in certain countries, and they level their ticket prices according to those to um, give people more more chance or a better chance to attend the festival in the end. And you can find that with other events on then maybe a small or a local scale, where the local community is invited in a different way, etc. So I think there's a lot happening, but also we were talking about the rising production costs. How can you increase more income to meet those? And you're increasing ticket prices. And that, of course, is the opposite of being inclusive, because expensive tickets exclude those people who cannot afford these tickets. So we most certainly need to find ways, and of course there needs to be a ticket price, and but we need to find ways and smart structures to get those people in who we really want to experience the culture that we are offering as well, and still be able to pay our bills.
Young audiences bring very different habits and values around sustainability, identity, ethics, and digital life. And how are these shifts in the audience and big audience? Because like the audience is getting older, and you need the young people in. How are these young people changing the industry or the business around music festivals?
This basically is the most complex question that you ask.
For the end of our interview, there's the most important question.
So the young people is not just one kind of people. So the young people are very, very different as well. And I think festivals need to invest in knowing their fan base, their community. I mentioned that before. And learning about their values, their interests, their requests, their requirements, to meet them. That said, the festival should have their own values, their own philosophy. That most certainly also should be based or meet the values of the people you want to have there. So you need to know what the young people, the generation that you want to be there, not only this year or next year, you want to have them in the future. So you need to somehow align with them and at least question what you have defined for your festival yourself. But I think this is not just a thing that you need to look at if it comes to popular music festivals. This applies to all fields of society and everyday life, where we include the next generation. We need to be aware of that. We need to be open for that. We also have, if it comes to my opinion, we also have the responsibility that if we want to communicate our values, feel the responsibility that we can give them and add to them, because they not only have demands, I would also say they are open for inspiration and open for experience that they want from us. And we should challenge them also in a way if it comes to them. But basically, first of all, know about it, gather the information, ask them, involve them, give participation. There's festivals, for example, who have a like a sounding board of young people, helping with them with creating the program or looking at services that they offer on the side. Voice is doing that, for example, in Finland. If you want to have good examples, Europe also was part of a Erasmus Plus project called Fusion Festivals as Social Innovation Incubators for young people. And there's a lot of examples online also. You will find that if you go to the Europe website, but there's basically something that we need to look at and find out if it comes to dealing with the new generations.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So after the most complex question, I'm gonna end this interview with a personal one, an easy one, and I'd like to know, what do you love the most about your work in music industry? And maybe do you have some memory from any festival that you ever attended that you cherish and you like to go back to in yourself?
Well, that's very easy. It's the people. We call it the festival family, but I came to know so many amazing people in this industry who inspire me, and maybe I even had the chance to inspire them at least a bit. And if you do this, and if you feel inspired and make friends, then you also get invited, or you will be able to see festivals from a different angle. So if you go to festivals, yes, and you build lifelong connections. One of my festival friends, for example, was my best man at my wedding. And if it comes to my favorite experience, is that I proposed to my wife at Pohoda Festival during sunset. And I will never forget that. And she said yes. So I will always have it remembered in good spirit.
That's so lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for this interview. It was really inspiring. And I really hope that once again, with congratulations on your newborn baby, and just the best of luck to you. And thank you so much.
It will be a festival baby, I promise.
I hope so. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Echoes of Prague Music Week.